balance act of keep the gas pedal on, flooding the body with insulin to match with the amount of glucose that's circulating because the liver is not circulating properly.
So Lynn, if someone is constantly like flooding the body with insulin, let's say their insulin is on overdrive, can't get that glucose out of the blood sugar's high. What are some signs? What does that start to look like in their daily life? Because while these are great things theoretically and sort of like medically to look at or from the standpoint of biology, what would that look like in someone's day-to-day life? How would they feel? How would they kind of navigate and move around their day if this is happening?
So if you're insulin resistant in the skin, you can get what a lot of, especially menopausal women will tell me that they have these blotches, dark blotches on their skin, or they get these
Mm,
velvety patches. And that actually isn't an estrogen thing. That's an insulin thing. When your skin is insulin resistant, you get all of these little brown markings. But you can get things like if your liver is insulin resistant, then you get things like non-alcoholic fatty liver disease.
oh
And
gosh.
inflammation everywhere. People just think, okay, I have inflammation. Well, I'm getting older or I'm retaining water. Okay, what if that isn't it? Sleep disturbances is another big one. We talked about this last time, where just one night of sleep can really mess up your insulin systems in your body. So getting a good night's sleep is good, but then you kind of have that gerbil wheel where when you have sleep apnea or you have sleep problems, now this just keeps magnifying night after night after night and really creating an insulin resistant problem in the body. But it can be anything from fatigue and brain fog. How many need to take a nap after they eat, within an hour or so? Unexplained weight gain, headaches and dizziness, PCOS, polycystic ovarian. A lot of hormonal imbalances can be some of it. Loss of muscle mass, skin tags, even anxiety and depression, and frequent urination. So you see, the symptoms are all over the place because the body uses glucose everywhere for fuel, and you have to have that insulin in the bloodstream to manage it. So the bloodstream goes everywhere. So any organ pretty much can be affected.
Yeah, I've also heard vision can be greatly affected as well because high blood sugar basically can cause a fluid imbalance where your body's basically pulling fluid from the eyes, and then you can't really see that well. Your vision becomes blurry. Also, I think high blood sugar tends to correlate with different sorts of eye issues as well. Isn't that true that the excess blood sugar can cause the it's not glaucoma, but I think it's the other
Diabetic
situation.
retinopathy.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't going to use that term, but that's probably the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you have chronic high blood sugar circulating, it can really do a lot of damage to the cardiovascular system. So it
Yeah.
creates the plaquing, and it creates the hardening of the arteries, which make the arteries now become smaller.
Yeah.
When they become smaller, so now you have to get the fluid, the same amount of fluid, through a smaller pipe. What does that create? Oh, that creates high blood pressure. So a lot of high blood pressure issues are really insulin resistant issues. If we fix that, the blood pressure is fixed as well. So it really depends on, like, if you have insulin resistance in the liver, it's high triglycerides, non-alcoholic fatty liver, metabolic issues, and high blood sugar. If you have insulin resistant in the fat cells, you're going to have inflammation in that adipose tissue, obesity, and a lot of metabolic issues. And then, of course, the big one that we've kind of been skirting around, which is insulin resistance in the brain. Well, they're
Right.
coming to find out that a lot of the Alzheimer's and the dementias can be created because that's just too much insulin in the brain. And what that does is that distorts the neurocircuitry and kills off neurons in the brain.
Yeah, it's a pretty masterful list. It's a big list, and that's why it may be called the Master Hormone because it affects so much. And what I find interesting, Lynn, is a lot of these things are things that we would commonly say, "Hey, this is just part of aging. Oh, it's just part of life." Oh, I'm a little more achy because I'm getting to an age. But how much of it actually is that, and how much of it is insulin resistance, right? And then that causing this cascade of issues. I was watching some guy was like 91 years old, some island guy, and he was absolutely, very healthy weight, extremely lean, running around like he was like, 20 years old, climbed up a palm tree, grabbed the coconut, swung all the way down. And I'm just like, oh my God, guy's 91 years old, right? So we really don't know what is possible with our bodies. We think we know, but we really don't know. And in today's world where there's so much getting added to our food, it's even harder and harder to really decipher what is our true health outcome, or what is the outcome that, big food is causing us to kind of move into. So I'd like to hear, what do you think is possible with your body, or what would you like to see come about with your body and with your health? And Lynn, that raises an interesting question, and we're going to take some callers, but you've been noticing that it's not just what's in the food, it's also some of the thoughts and the feelings and the emotions that are creating perhaps some ways that our bodies are responding to our reality. What are you seeing there? What is the mind connection to this whole story?
Let me say real quick about your island guy. So first of all, when you live on an island, it's very expensive to have food brought in. So he's eating a lot more natural food
Yep.
than he's not going to be eating all this box food that a lot of people in, let's say, a city would end up eating. So that's number one. But another very important piece that we haven't really talked about before is that hypothalamus. Everything about the hypothalamus is all about light through the eyes. And so all of this nighttime
Mhm.
fluorescent or blue light from our or from our computers or cell phones or whatever really can create a lot of insulin resistance because it affects the hypothalamus. One of the best things you can do is watch the sun come up in the morning. That completely like resets your brain and resets your endocrine system for the day. So super, super good for the body. But what it also does is this is where that leptin resistance comes in and kind of really is a partner to that insulin resistance. That the leptin resistance needs that sunlight during the day for that to function properly, right? And the leptin is regulates that appetite. So it can help to regulate, do you have to have that sugary product right now or not? So there's so many pieces to the puzzle. It's crazy. But do yourself a favor and make sure you're getting out and looking at the sun. So not only are they killing us with the food, but years and years and years ago, they said, you have to slather sunscreen on because the sun's bad and you have to wear sunglasses. And they're finding out now that sunglasses are creating macular degeneration because we're not looking at the sun. We're not taking in that sunshine. Well, that also affects your entire endocrine system as well. So for the
Yeah.
TFEs, the thoughts, feelings, and emotions, I was really surprised. We sent out a survey just to see what everybody thought, and really kind of the same 10 or 12 came back for almost everybody, which I found
Hmm.
fascinating. So the biggest one was fear. So it was all
Hmm.
kinds of fears. Fear somebody was going to have to take care of them when they're older, fear of getting diabetes, um, fear that they had done something for all these years that, hurt their health, but just all kinds of fears.
Hmm.
Hopelessness, shame, frustration, anxiety, stress, lack of control. They don't feel like they have any control in their body, despair and blame and anger and guilt. So all of these kinds of emotions were what came up. And I actually recorded the TFE MP3 for the series today, and because I wanted to see really what was going on and how the bodies were reacting. And it was really interesting because we went through the years, we went through age brackets, and it was just really interesting to go through these different age brackets and all of this data, traumas, abuses, situations and events, somebody passing when you were a young kid. I mean, any of these things, remember, we can take any thought, feeling, and emotion and put it in our body anywhere that can create something 40, 50 years from now. It just kind of sits in there and keeps building. And so that's what I was finding with this thoughts, feelings, and emotions detox, having to do with whatever created insulin resistance in your body. Let's move it on out. And so that's what we were doing, was going back and picking and plucking these different events and things through the years out of everybody's body.
Yeah, that is super interesting. And Lynn, I'd like to go a little deeper into that. explain how you see a thought, a feeling, an emotion, an event, traumatic event, or some life change, or something that someone went through, but maybe they didn't fully process or they couldn't understand at the time what was going on. How would that create a situation where they might be more likely to be insulin resistant today, whatever age they're in? Explain how those are perhaps connected.
It can happen on a couple different ways. One is epigenetics, where you have DNA, your DNA does not change. But whether that DNA is expressed or not can change. So I
Okay.
look at it like little dip switches, like in your garage door opener or something. You have those little switches you have to change to mimic what the frequency that your door needs to say open. It's the same thing in the body, right? There's something happen that changes the frequency and says, okay, we're going to turn this gene on. So there really is only one genetic marker that if you have the marker, you have the disease, and that's sickle cell anemia. Everything else that they
Everything
have
else.
found
Yeah.
has to be turned on in some way, shape, or form. And it's
Mm,
usually by infection, it's by environment, or it's by an emotional trigger. So you could have chicken pox, and that can create something down the road, or literally you could have had your grandmother die when you were 3, and that created something in your body. That shock, that grief, that trauma created something in your body that just kind of stuck there, and it will then turn that gene on. So this is why I sit here and have told you and kind of read you the riot act about a lot of these things are in your hands in terms of reading labels and stuff, because different food products that we have, those things, those toxins can turn on these genes. So there's a
amazing.
lot of things that can turn these genes on. Whatever you have control over, take control of, because that was one of the things you guys said. You feel like you have a lack of control. That's a way you can take control of your health.
Yeah. So by helping us to kind of clean out some of these older thoughts, feelings, beliefs, emotions, and get them back into alignment, we can get our bodies back into a little bit more of a state of homeostasis, decide what it is maybe we want to activate in our bodies and how we want to live the rest of our lives. Give me another sign that someone might be dealing with insulin resistance. Is there another way that this shows up? What about anxiousness, mood swings, this feeling of like it's kind of like a fight or flight feeling where it's like you're either fully exhausted or you've got to drink a ton of coffee to go full bore, right? There's no just like happy, energetic medium. Let me know, everyone, if you've ever felt that way or if you're feeling that. And Lynn, is that something you've actually noticed with people as well?
Yeah, since we talked about how if it gets to the brain, it affects those neurons. Well, it's kind of, again, let's go back to our car example, like somebody has a gas pedal down and it's always down. So you never can kind of just relax and get into that parasympathetic mode. You're stuck in sympathetic
Yep.
of, okay, what's going on? Am I okay? Is
Yes.
everything okay around me? And
Yes.
so a lot of times too, the interesting piece of it is you may not notice it during the day because you're busy doing things, but then as soon as you go to sleep, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. But then you lay down and it's like somebody just turned the volume up, and you're like, now you're like, and you're like, I can't go to sleep now. So to me, that's a typical kind of insulin resistance thing, when you're exhausted, but yet you can't sleep because somebody just plugged you in and started charging you up.
And I'm going to kind of stretch the dialogue a little bit here because what's interesting is if you look at that state of consciousness, that is kind of kind of a fight or flight state, a little bit of a, my world isn't safe. And what does that do to consciousness? What does that do to kind of the level of consciousness you can connect to? What does that do to like the level of wisdom or awareness that you're actually able to plug into, right? It keeps you more in this reactionary mode. So I find that to be very interesting. And I've had this discussion about hormones and cortisol and other things with many other people. And it seems like a lot of these substances are keeping us kind of in this, I almost call it like a lower vibrational, sort of like constant reactionary mode instead of this elevated awareness mode where we are in calm, we're in balance, we're in receiving of everything going on, and we're actually connecting to higher pathways. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Lynn, but also let me know. Wired tired. That's a good term. That's exactly. It's like I'm wired. and I'm tired. What do you think, Lynn, about kind of the connection points that some of these energies and thoughts can create?
To me, what you just said is true. And it's to me, it's like quicksand.
Mm-hmm.
People are struggling to get out of it and you just can't because something's constantly kind of, pulling down on you. And the thing that I would say to that is if you feel like you have to do everything yourself and you don't have a backup, if you don't have some sort of a connection to the divine, whatever that is for you, and you're all out here hanging out, doing it all on your own, safety becomes a big issue
Mm-hmm.
because how do you manage all that by yourself?
Mm.
Those that are in communities, whatever kind of community that is, where you know these people have your back and you're connected in some way, shape, or form, then it's a lot easier to deal with your past safety issues and move past that and really get out of that fight or flight because you have a community. So if you feel like you're hanging out there by yourself and you still have a lot of that, find your community, figure out what that is for you and find that community.
I agree. Yeah, I agree completely. And I want to get to some questions. Go ahead and share with us kind of what's going on and what you are thinking about today's dialogue. The other interesting thing, too, and I'm going to say, I find that when we are in kind of this fight or flight, we're in sort of this reactionary mode, we tend to be in survival. So I'm going to throw that out there. This is a survival mode. Um,
And we
and
don't make good decisions.
yeah, it ties a lot to money, abundance, and you may say it's a stretch, folks here, but it really is. If you control your body systems or you can manage them and you can be in a balanced state, you are going to be in a balance in other areas of your life. You're going to be a balance in your decision. You are also going to connect to bigger ideas and bigger awarenesses that produce multiples of results versus kind of looking for the immediate solution constantly, which is a fight or flight, up, down, high, low, rise, crash type situations. It's like if your insulin is out of control, it's kind of like a day trader, right? You're constantly buying and selling energy like nonstop. It's the same kind of thing. And one day you're up, you're down, and your decisions are very short term. And you feel like you're on this short term treadmill versus being fully balanced, fully aligned, and fully able to actually make longer term decisions that are strategic. So it definitely affects consciousness. So I bring this in because it's a big piece. And like, I don't know why this stuff's getting put in food, but there could be multiple agendas here. Lynn, any ideas on that? Are they trying to make us unhealthy? Are they trying to keep us sort of in this like fight or flight stage? Or are they trying to make more money on the additives? Or
I
all of
think
the above? No,
I
I
think
don't
it,
know.
I think it can be all of the above, but I mean, it's very obvious. It's very obvious to me, anyways, that they're trying to control the food supply. We
Yeah.
just had something like 100,000 poor llamas that had to be
Oh no.
shot in Canada.
Oh
The
no.
lady was absolutely hysterical. I mean, none of them were ill. We just had 1 million chickens culled because one chicken had a bird flu. We have this screwworm now that they're saying has worked its way up from Panama that now threaten
Hmm.
all of our cattle in the United States. And now there's another parasite that hasn't been seen in 60 years. All of a sudden, it's popping up. That's a potential problem for cattle. They're trying to control the food. If you control the food, you control the population. You control the water, you control the population.
Yeah.
So it's a huge issue.
Well, what I want to do is I want to give people a doorway out of that. We're going to be diving into this topic today with Lynn a little deeper. We're going to take some callers, but remember, we're dealing with this master hormone, this insulin resistance, and it's not just about our bodies. It's not just about how we look. It seems to impact our health, our longevity, how long we're going to be on the planet. Here's the thing: the shorter human lifespans are, the easier we are to control because it's always the people that live the longest that tend to have the chances to obtain the most wisdom. It's interesting. I was listening to this shaman, Credo Mutwa. He used to be a gentleman that was interviewed a lot, and he talked about when the British actually went in to the African region and they would basically conquer these tribes and they would control them. First thing they would do is they would take these shaman and the British military would like sequester them off, and they would interview them and capture all of their information and write it down, and then they would unfortunately execute these genius shaman, right? And with these elders out of the way and all of this wisdom now in the hands of these British, military people, the rest of the population, one generation would pass and they would know nothing about their true origin. They would know nothing about their true power, about all of the esoteric wisdom that was passed down through time. So the shorter human lifespans can become, the more we can forget all of the wisdom of antiquity, right? And then you can manipulate it. So I do think there's a big reason that lifespans could be shortening, and we don't want that. So we want to stay living a long time, and we want lives that are balanced and aligned so we can live our highest truth. We don't want to be on the hamster wheel. So let me know if that sounds good to you. And yeah, a lot of people writing in and saying, yes, absolutely. We got this. Yes, absolutely. Okay. So I want to get to some questions. So that's kind of the bigger thing here. This is a humanity issue, right? And we're going to dive into it because I think they know some of these things, and they tend to manipulate certain things in some of the most important areas of our life and health. And that is definitely our food and our body and our hormonal balance of this master hormone. So if you've got a question, I want to go to Janice, Janice. And Janice, maybe you're dealing with something around insulin or something else, but we're going to just take your beautiful question today. Janice, what do you think about today's topic, and how are you doing? See if we can get Janice on here. And if we can't, then we will go to another guest. There you are.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I'm doing fine, except I'm getting all these little headaches all the time, and I have no reason
okay.
to.
Okay.
Are they coming at a particular time of the day, like you're waking up with them?
Sometimes it's just random all through the day and night. And I usually don't have headaches, so this is something, I had the sciatica, but that healed, and now I got the headache. So I guess it's moving around.
There is an insulin resistant symptom,
Yeah.
especially to wake up with headaches, because your blood glucose and your insulin drop during the night, and they cycle.
Okay.
And when that's cycling like that, it can create one so that you wake up in the morning with a headache, or you wake up even in the middle of the night with one. So let's take a look here. It's interesting. It's not a bullseye. What do you call it when it's like, it's just like a circle that with the line that keeps going around it? I can't think of, like, it's kind of like a bullseye, but that kind of a bullseye. But anyways, it's going to a particular part of your pancreas.
Interesting.
And as soon as I start working on it, I can feel it up here, especially on the left side, kind of near the temple.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we're working on
mine now is in the back of my head, on the right. It's like a migraine, pound.
Yeah. So we're working on that part of the pancreas, and we're also, for now, going to work on that pain
Okay.
pathway going up to the head. And this is for anybody that's on the call. We're working on a particular part of her pancreas, but if anybody else's needs some energy, it can go ahead and use these energies, as well as that pain pathway energy.
And it's interesting that, her headaches, you may think it's not related to insulin resistance. It could be, right? We just talked about the glucose connection and the glucose levels dropping at night. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have never thought of it. But
all right, well, we're just going to let those energies just keep going.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, the more that we're constantly in these high insulin states, it's like the less we can actually get the glucose and use it correctly, right? It's literally like the ultimate paradox. You're swimming in glucose, but it's all in your blood, but it's not in the cells where they actually need it, that give you energy. Like we don't, the interesting thing here real quick is like, we don't remember sometimes what it's like to have the energy. You know why kids have a lot of energy? because they
Right.
actually, yes, they have less thoughts, feelings, emotions that they're processing because they haven't been living as long, but they actually, most kids use glucose effectively, and the second they eat some sugar, it goes right into their muscles, right into their brain, and they're just like using it. We forget,
Yes.
you know. So anyway, Lynn, what's going on?
Thank you. Wow.
We're going to let these energies continue because there's a bunch
Okay.
of people pulling in pain pathways, especially. So we
Okay.
must have a lot of people in pain on this call
Oh
today.
Thank
God.
you, Lynn. Thank you so much, Darius. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you.
Keep us
Absolutely.
informed.
Thank you, Janice. Yeah, no, I get passionate about this because you know what drives me nuts is how they convince us to forget what it feels like to freaking have energy, what it feels like to feel alive. And they want us to think it's normal to be tired all the time, to be worn down, to not freaking move, not have like, a lot of energy, and all that. And then if there's a kid that can't sit still, they're like, oh, that's abnormal. Let's give them some Ritalin. When I was in college, I did a childhood theater arts program, and I was like working with kids. There was one kid, and his name was something like Ambushed, and this kid, a year before, my professor was like, you are going to love this kid. He's amazing. He's like the most animated, like brilliant child. He's like a genius and whatever. So we're like, yeah, this is going to be great. It's like a kids theater arts class. We're thinking we're going to like come up with all these cool things we're going to do with this kid and all the others. Came the day he showed up, and the kid was like a walking zombie. And I was like, what's going on with Ambush? I thought this was like, this most energized genius child. And the parents or someone had decided he's got too much energy. Let's just drug him up. Right. So he just shut off this amazing natural gift. And I believe if we can use glucose properly, like we will have that energy of our childhood. That's the promise of what we're talking about. And maybe sidestep some pretty nasty stuff we don't want. So let me go to another caller here. Let's see. I'm going to go to Neetu. I don't know if I've ever called on you, Neetu. Neetu. Neetu, are you there? And hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct.
Yes, you pronounced it correctly. It is me too.
Neetu. Okay. Well, I go with Darius. Some people call me Darius, and I'm just like, it's all good. But hi, Neetu. What's going on?
Hi, thank you for picking me.
What's
Hey, me
happening?
too. How are you doing?
So I'm a mess actually. My main thing is everything that I think I know that my symptoms are. I have autoimmune condition. I have psoriatic arthritis. My liver's messed up. My central nervous system is the worst. It's like just chronic pain, inflammation, all of the above. So that's what's going on with me.
All right.
And again, a lot of these things are related to what we're talking about, which is so interesting. Hmm.
All right, Neetu. So how long have you had the autoimmune?
All my life.
Starting at what age?
10.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not all your life. Um, your body's taking me back to the age of 3, and it's also showing me chicken pox exacerbating it.
Oh yes, I've had them and mumps.
But anything come up for you, and if you're uncomfortable with saying it, that's fine. But anything come up for you with the age of 3,
I don't
an
recall.
an illness or an emotional thing that went on?
Well, I'm originally from India, and at that time there was a little bit of war going on,
Mm.
and we had to go to underground bunkers. So I think I got exposed to a lot of radiation.
Yeah, but your body told me it was emotional, so I don't think there
Oh,
is such a thing as a little bit of war.
Hmm.
So, and I'm sure going underground as a 3 or 4 year old is probably
yeah,
something
that's
that's
that's the only thing that comes to my mind.
pretty
Hmm.
interesting. So let's work on pulling out some of those, even if they're hidden things, that you've kind of brushed off. So we want to pull out whatever the traumas are, whatever the fear, any losses that you felt. And so the body's telling me that these, especially these two things, are what change those genetic dip switches. So you can have energetic DNA markers for 15 autoimmunes and never have an autoimmune in your life. Again, you have to have something that turns them on. So the emotional piece and the chicken pox then are the two things that kind of turn these on for you. So we also want to work on the herpes virus, because that's what chicken pox is, one of the herpes viruses. And herpes virus, what's interesting is it loves to attack the nervous system. It's its favorite game to play. That's why when people get shingles, it'll light up that one side of the nervous system.
Hmm.
So we're just doing some energetic work on chicken pox, pulling out this emotional piece, and asking your body to turn some of these DNA markers off. And there's a lot going on, and it's actually allowing other people. So remember, we talked the last time about the divine DNA code therapy. It's like I love Darius's picture back there of the double helix. So if you unraveled that, it would literally look like a keyboard, a piano keyboard. And so I'm listening to kind of the sonification of different parts of that keyboard, of that double helix, and listening for different blips, different places where epigenetic markers have turned it on or turned things off, where DNA is expressed, or maybe it's mutated because of something. And it also keeps going back to your kidneys. So we've got a lot of supportive energies for your kidneys going as well. So there's a lot going on. We'll just let it keep running here, and your body will know when to turn it off, okay?
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Nitu. How are you
Thank you
feeling?
so much. I'm feeling good. I had a little pain in my hip where I have the psoriatic arthritis. All of a sudden, it's gone. Well, that's interesting. So I appreciate that.
That's the magic. All right, we love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's confirmation, right? That we're on the right track. I do want to talk, Lynn, a little bit about what you're doing, which is quite new this time, with some of the different four new energy processing methodologies, right? That we're going to be unveiling. You're going to be unveiling in this program, and we talked about one. I think was perhaps was it the living matter reset you just talked about with Nitu?
No, the divine source code therapy.
Okay. Yeah. So there's electromagnetic energy balancing, metabolic reprogramming, and then this living matter reset. So I do want to get to those before the end of the call, because one of the real special things that you're bringing forward, and I get the sense that we're going to be handling a lot of different areas for people, and even if they're like, I don't think I'm insulin resistant, or I don't think I have a problem with that. Some of what you're going to be doing will benefit everybody, no matter what is going on in their body. It's going to help the body in general to be more supported, more aligned, more balanced, and more in a state where it can process everything going on the planet and in the world.
Yeah, and I think it was Jeff last time had said, can you please list what all the remote renewals are going to be? And so we had changed the listing on the sales page so that you can see what all is going to be in there. But I mean, we're going to be working with the pancreas and the beta cells, the liver, and especially with that glucose switch, genetics, just like what we were doing with Nitu, hormone imbalances, metabolism, and weight,
Wow.
gut, skin, and immune responses, because it affects all of those, cognitive decline in nerves, sleep deprivation and stress, the kidneys and the eyes, joints, because I believe that insulin resistance is the reason why we have an epidemic of putting replacement parts in people's hips, knees, shoulder,
Yeah, we
arms.
talked about that last time. That is crazy. And I mean, again, I'm not trying to say it's all like bad motive, but I mean, those are expensive, those are expensive wings in hospitals. Um, and you didn't hear about that stuff so often, back in the day. So yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
they never had them. And accelerated aging. I mean, that's a huge one too. Everybody wants all these different biohacks and a new serum and a new this and a new that to fix a wrinkle or whatever. And meanwhile, insulin resistance just robs us of a lot of what we need, the collagen and the elastin and things like that, creating a lot more wrinkles and a lot more aging
That
problems.
is
And it
true.
seems accelerated.
Wow. And it sounds like you may not even really know if you're insulin resistant or not. I mean, yes, you may have some major symptoms, but unless you do some sort of testing or you're able to actually look at data over, many different time periods, it might be really hard to know, right?
It is. I would look at that list of symptoms that we put up on the page. And if you have like two, three, four, five of those, then you want to start looking at the fact that, I need to look into this and figure out what I'm going to do to try to manage this better. For some people, one just may be enough, the sleep disturbances or whatever. But if somebody's really trying to figure this out, having a session with somebody like me, or you can ask your doctor. I don't know of any particular one test that kind of definitively says, yes, you're insulin resistant. So to
Right.
me, it's kind of like Parkinson's. I call it a bucket diagnosis, or it's like metabolic syndrome. It's a bucket where they have a list of symptoms. And if you have two, three, four of those symptoms, and they say, yes, now you have this disease.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to go to Teresa. I agree with that. And I say if you just don't feel like you have energy, you don't feel like after you eat, you actually have like kind of the energy you used to, that's a good sign your body is not utilizing, that glucose in the right way. And you're just not getting it in your cells, right? You're just not getting it in your cells. And that's the thing. You've got to get it properly in your cells. You'd be amazed at the energy you can unlock, the things you can do, the ideas you can have, the life force you can connect to. Because I mean, at the end of the day, Lynn, I mean, let's just cut to brass tacks, right? This is life force energy. Our body was designed to work in a certain way to have this life force to actually do, create, connect, and everything else. And once it gets manipulated, once it gets shunted off or distorted, you just don't have it, right? And then you're just kind of like this walking zombie, kind of plodding through life and never actually able to really create and live in your divine human essence that you were designed to express. So yeah, it's a big
That's
deal.
how the whole biohacking industry pretty much started a couple years ago. Was
Oh,
people wanted more energy, athletes wanted more energy,
yeah.
and people in general wanted more energy. But just taking some sort of something that gives you more energy doesn't fix the problem.
Right. And that's where biohacking is kind of cool. But at the same time, I'm like, well, why do you have to hack? It's actually your biology is designed to do that if you understand how your biology works. Like it's a cool marketing thing. And there are some things that you kind of end up hacking because of the way our world is. But why don't we just figure out how to design our world to where we're maximally optimized without hacking anything? It's like, but anyway, semantics. Let me go, but I agree, Lynn. Teresa, I just unmuted you. Thanks for being here. How can
Thank
we help
you.
you?
Okay, there are two things.
Okay.
One is my lips peel all the time, especially my lower lips. I can flakes come off. And the other thing is I usually go walking early in the morning and I feel kind of not really dizzy, but kind of wobbly. And I usually quite often in the morning before I go walking, I drink some water and I have bone broth or something a little bit.
Oh, gosh.
But my balance is a bit off and I wonder what that is.
Got it. So there's a couple parts in the brain that are lighting up. And then that's pointing the fingers. So your brain's pointing the finger at other places. It's pointing the finger back at the pancreas and actually your gut microbiome. And most people don't really see the connection between the gut and the brain, but there is just a huge connection there.
Mhm.
So how is your digestion? You go
You-
every day?
It's, I go 4 or 5 times a day and just small amounts. But
Okay.
it's quite often when I don't even feel it, but when I go and urinate, I have to go both.
Gotcha. All right, so we're going to work on those beta cells in the pancreas, and we're going to work on that gut microbiome. We're adding a bunch of good bacteria that try to overtake then any bad bacteria in there. So it's also showing me about 10 years ago,
Okay.
did you have some sort of illness that you recall 10 years ago?
No, I find I'm quite healthy. Nothing that I can remember. I
'Cause
always a little bit of gut problems. I always a little bit of digestive problems. And I'm
'cause it-
obese. I'm overweight. I'm quite overweight. And I went on diets on and off all my life.
well, it's showing me that in 2015 and 10 years ago, something hit the gut that kind of wiped out a bunch of good bacteria. So that was why I was asking if you had any illness, and it could have even just been, you had food poisoning or something that you ate just made you sick that particular day. But that's what we're working on right now is recovery, especially from that. So when did your gut issues first start? When you were young?
When I was very young, yes. Probably about 15, 16. And that's when I started going on diets, liquid diets, all kinds of crazy diets. At one time, my gut was very sick because I had, what is it called? Parasites.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things your body was showing me from 2015.
That's possible. It was much earlier than 2015 when it started.
So
And
I call it a timeline. So you can
okay,
have a bunch of different pieces or triggers on the timeline. It's only taking me back 10 years ago to that part of the timeline. So we're going to work on some parasite stuff and work on trying to help rebuild some of that microbiome.
thank you.
See, and at some point you had H. pylori,
Yes.
which is also attributed to diabetes. Someone had asked in the chat, I saw, what about parasites and diabetes? There are a couple of strands, Toxoplasmosis gondii, H. pylori, strongyloides. There's a couple of them that are associated with diabetes. But I know there's something going around TikTok that's not necessarily true right now, that there's a pancreatic liver fluke that makes its way to the pancreas that creates all diabetes. I'm not sure that I get that, but I will tell you that there was a research study done that they took people that had diabetes, and the worldwide group, 25% of the diabetics had parasites. But in the Americas, 95% of the diabetics had parasites.
Okay.
So there is or can be a correlation.
Um, well, Lynn, I'll write that down. I want to ask you that question about parasites and insulin resistance. That's super interesting.
I'm not sure that parasites necessarily cause insulin resistance, but here's the thing. For parasites to be able to live, you have to have a more acidic environment. Okay. For you to have a more acidic environment, that now opens you up to a lot of things that aren't functioning properly, including your insulin and your sugar delivery and processing. So, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure, but they can be associated and happen at the same time because one creates the environment for the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a lot, Teresa, we have a lot of energies going, got tons of them going for that gut and trying to rebuild some of that gut. And another one in terms of parasites and things like that, and killing that off. So just know that, drink lots of water, make sure that your systems and everything are flushing out, especially the next couple of days. Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you,
do that.
Teresa. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, both of you.
Thank you. Let us know how you're feeling. And, I wanted to keep chatting with her, but one of the things I want to do, we've got a really special process we're going to do for everybody. So you can see Teresa smiling right now. She must be feeling better. We're going to do something, Lynn, pretty cool. And I know me and you talked about this and we're like, hey, this is going to be amazing. Tell them what we're going to do. And this is going to be really fun. I think we're going to open up a little pathway here where people can really become best friends, best buds with their body and get some interesting answers.
So we're going to do a group process about being best friends with your body and with insulin. We need to be best friends with insulin and we need to make sure it's working properly. So remember, we can be in the liver, the fat cells, the muscles, the brain, and even the skin, right? Technically, that's where we are insulin resistant. But we also talked about all these downstream effects that you see in all these organ systems and organs. So let's explore your body. And we talked about the TFEs, right? The thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so let's do some exploratory work here and see where your bodies, hang on one second, Darius, see where your bodies find this insulin resistant or a problem that may be trying to kick that on.
When you said best friends with insulin, even I was like, no, I don't want to be best friends with that. That's bad. I mean, this is the first thing that came in. I could feel it come in. So I was like, oh my God, I got to ask everybody. I'm going to say this. And you type in your first response. Be best friends with insulin. What's the first response you have? Like, yes, this is great. Or, oh no, I don't want that. Let me know without thinking, right? Without thinking, because my friend's like, oh, I don't want that. But if I'm not best friends with it, then boy, I'm going to get a cascade of health issues, could shorten my life. I could have eye issues, coronary issues, low energy, low consciousness. Big list. Let me see what people are saying. Yes. We're getting a lot of yes. Repel, resistance. We get hell yeah. We get stress. Did you disconnect the live stream? Oh, I need to disconnect the live stream. All right, everyone, we're going to end the live stream. And so if you guys want to hear the process,